Hi there, my name's Dr. Paula Krepstad, and today we're going to talk about your genetics. The reason you're watching this is that you've had your genetics done through Genomics Nutrition, and in order to help you understand some things before you come in, I want to review what your genes are going to look like. I also want to talk a little bit about supplementation and how do you know if you have a methylation deficiency or not. Alrighty. So what is DNA? DNA is the genetic material that we're all born with. It comes from our mom and our dad. Some genetic material is passed on only from the mama, and moms have an XX chromosome, men have, and boys have XY chromosomes. So some genes, only two that are on this particular test, will say plus or minus and then NA, not applicable. That's how you know that it was only carried on maternal X chromosomes. So for boys and men, there are only two that say that. Let's talk about nutritional supplements. To begin with, as a very basic matter, keep in mind that supplements supplement. The definition of supplement is something that completes or enhances something else when added to it. So what does a nutritional supplement supplement? The two main things supplements supplement are your daily food intake and the things that your body produces or is supposed to produce naturally. Here's the point. Your primary source of nutrition is your food. That's something you can and should do something about. You absolutely must continually work on improving your food consumption behavior, and you absolutely must not assume that foregoing major behavior modification and taking nutritional supplements alone will lead to long-term health, wellness, and immunity. Just remember, supplements supplement. For example, if you're consuming a handful of supplements at the same time you're consuming a McDonald's cheeseburger with Coke and fries, you shouldn't waste your money on supplements if you aren't going to change your diet. Secondly, as you begin and continue taking nutritional supplements while drastically changing your eating habits, your body chemistry changes and evolves. Therefore, there may be some tweaking of our nutritional supplement recommendations for the first 6 months or so, and at a minimum, we should review your health status and supplement recommendations at least annually thereafter. As your eating habits improve, you may be able to reduce or eliminate some supplements, and we can help guide you to make the best choices in this regard using the best evidence. A major part of our functional medicine practice is nutrigenomics, which is the analysis of the effects of nutrient intake on gene function and health. Genetic variations affect how the body utilizes vitamins and minerals and removes toxins. An understanding of an individual's genotype enables diets to be tailored to meet specific genetic needs. So at Hope for Healing, we often recommend a nutrigenomic test by Genomics Nutrition. It's a simple cheek swab to obtain cells from the inside of your mouth, and the lab specifically analyzes 55 genes looking for SNPs, that is single nucleotide polymorphisms, or variances, changes, abnormalities. Why these 55 genes? Because these are potential SNPs that we can do something about. I like to call this actionable genetic testing, not doom and gloom testing. What action? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Usually the action is nutritional supplementation with major dietary modifications. So my point here is that nutrigenomics is about the combination of nutrition and genetics, and we're primarily interested in ensuring that your body is properly nourished. Who needs nutritional supplements? Really, everyone to some degree or another. For one, our soils have been significantly depleted and yield crops deficient in many of the nutrients they should include. Second, even in the best circumstances, most people do not eat enough variety and nutrient-dense foods to ensure proper nourishment. And as we learn from nutrigenomics, most of us have some genetic variances which affect our nutrient absorption or processes. In sum, the top 3 reasons most people need nutritional supplements are nutrient-deficient foods, imperfect diets, and genetic variances or abnormalities. I hasten to add that all of these may apply to you, but you may be unaware of underlying problems in your body or problems that may be in your future that can be avoided by nutritional changes we can make now. Most of us, however, if we're not feeling fantastic most of the time, can make phenomenal progress with nutritional supplementation combined with dietary improvements. So we've talked about how nutrigenomics can guide our decisions on supplements, and that focuses on our genes, which do not change. We've talked about how supplementation with diet changes can and should improve our health and change our body chemistry, how we need to evaluate how we're doing as we go. How do we do that? Well, of course, we want to carefully and continually observe how we feel and to systematically evaluate our body functions and document our progress. So it's important that you subjectively evaluate how you feel, and we encourage this. We also have more objective means of evaluating our nutrition. In particular, we often recommend a micronutrient test by SpectraCell Labs, which involves a blood draw. This test for specific micronutrients, including B vitamins, amino acids, metabolites, vitamins, minerals, trace elements, and antioxidants, is an outstanding test. So the SpectraCell micronutrient test gives a very objective snapshot of about 6 months of nutrition, showing our body's intracellular nutrient levels and guides us on deficiencies that we can remedy with supplementation or areas where we can reduce or eliminate supplements because our body function has changed or improved. We also have urine micronutrient tests for children and adults. We want to provide you sophisticated, individualized, and customized advice based on reliable evidence and testing, which is a lot more beneficial than what you may obtain from the 19-year-old clerk at the vitamin store or healthy living aisle at the grocery store or from Dr. Google. They are not going to be able to talk to you about bioavailable B vitamins or vitamin D3 and the need to add vitamin K2 or not based on your nutrigenomic findings. Lastly, let's visit briefly on the subject of supplement sources. Beware of Amazon on issues of storage and temperature control practices. Some supplement companies don't even allow their products to be sold on Amazon, such as Zymogen, because they want to enforce the strictest standards on temperature, storage, and delivery practices. Beware of large retail stores. Beware of contaminated or fake products, essentially Chinese knockoffs. Defer to your provider's chosen suppliers. I have a few supplement companies that I have personally vetted. I use them. Quality control, for example, heavy metals, contamination with lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury, to name a few. The testing that various companies use, and the location of manufacturing. So in review, we've talked about nutrigenomics, micronutrient testing, the who, what, why, where, when, and how of supplements, and our recommendation for at least an annual review of your health status and supplement recommendations. What's DNA? DNA is our genetic material. The only thing I really want you to take home from this slide is that it's composed of things called nucleotides, 4 of them, A, T, G, and C. You don't need to get down into the weeds and learn more about it at this point in time. When you get your report, it's going to say A, T, G, or C, and we'll talk about the significance of it. Neurotransmitters, about 95% of them are made in our gut, and they affect the entire body. As you can see, they affect mood, digestion, sleep, fatigue, anxiousness, weight, and attention. Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut, and it's so true. If you've got a gut that has problems, if you're burping a lot, passing gas, farting a lot, let's just say it like it is, have a lot of reflux or heartburn, abdominal pain, alternating constipation with diarrhea, then we know automatically that your gut is out of whack. Additionally, if you have skin flares such as eczema, psoriasis, we know that your gut is what we call leaky or increased intestinal permeability. So back to neurotransmitters. There are neurotransmitters made only in the brain, and they can't cross the blood-brain barrier. But the 95% otherwise are manufactured in the gut. So gut health is very important. Now, why talk about genetics? Well, genetics can affect the level of neurotransmitters. Either it's harder to make them, harder to use them, or you use them up too quickly. All right, we're looking at this slide because it has to do with our genes. So over here you see the yellow circle. Those are our genes or our genotype. And here you see the environment, the type of food you eat, the type of air you breathe, the type of products you put on or in your body, what kind of dust and particles are in your home. And how those genes are expressed is right here in the middle. That's what makes you, you, and that's called the phenotype. So here is genotype and here is phenotype. Basically saying just because you have certain genes doesn't mean you're going to end up with a certain disease. This is a busy slide, but it's really critical. Follow the cursor. Let's just say that one strand of your DNA comes from your mom and this other strand comes from your dad. How they end up together right here is the normal sequence. And a SNP, or a single nucleotide polymorphism or change, is like a little typographical error. But there are no errors. God made us a certain way, and we need to take what we've got, do the best that we can, and give ourselves what we need in order to function optimally. So down here at the bottom, you see that there's been a substitution of a nucleotide pair. When I think of the word morph, I think of metamorphosis or a change, the way that something looks. So a caterpillar to a butterfly, they have the same genetic material, but the way that it looks is different. So next slide shows what I'm trying to say in a picture form. Let's say right here you've got a gene and this is a normal sequence. The genetic material or the DNA codes for an enzyme. That is a protein. So here you see there's a normal gene sequence and it makes a normal functioning enzyme. Enzymes are made out of proteins. Tons of amino acids make a protein. So this enzyme has normal shape and normal function. But right here you have one SNP. Depending on where it is in the gene and what enzyme it codes for, you can have a tremendous decrease in the functionality of that enzyme. So if you're trying to make a certain type of folate that your body needs, the endpoint, and you don't have effective genes, then you have altered shape, altered function because you've got a SNP. So as you can see here in the picture, that's the issue. Now, when you get your genetics results back, it's going to say minus minus, minus plus, or plus plus. It does not distinguish between maternal or DNA from your mom or paternal DNA, except in two cases. I'll show an illustration of that in another video. The only genes that are only carried on the maternal chromosome that are on your Genomics Nutrition 55 genetic test are MAOB, which is associated, it can be associated with depression, or G6PD, which is associated with you cannot receive IV vitamin C or your red blood cells may break open in your bloodstream. So those are only carried on the maternal chromosome. So it will say minus and then not applicable, or plus and not applicable, depending on what your mom's DNA shows. So you can only blame mom for one of these things. Otherwise, the test does not designate if it's maternal or paternal DNA. So minus minus, it's counterintuitive, is normal. And if you have another type of a test like Livwello or something else, then that will be green. So green is normal. Green is go. Think, yes, it's normal. Over here on this side, we have plus plus. That's called homozygous. If you have one of those colored tests, it will be red. If it's plus plus, that means that you received from both your mom and your dad an abnormal functioning gene. And of course, plus plus or homozygous is going to be the more critical or lowest functioning enzymatic activity. In the middle, that will be yellow if you've had Livwello, Genetic Genie, Ancestry.com as the result. And it's called heterozygous. You've got a plus and a minus. And once again, this is not as bad as plus plus. Now, the great thing about Genomics Nutrition is that these are all genes that you can do something about. They're not doom and gloom. We don't want to tell you, oh, you're going to get this horrible disease. There's actually 6 categories: methylation, mitochondria, neurotransmitters, inflammation, detoxification, and other health precautions. And the first session will cover inflammation and other health precautions. Now, I don't know what people's genes are going to be ahead of time, so it could be different for each different person. We may move right into methylation, or, well, I haven't had anyone that we haven't had to address methylation. All right, this little carbon and 3 hydrogens, and don't worry, you don't have to remember this, is called a methyl group. Why is this important? Well, methylation is like the foundation of a house. If you've got a little crack in the foundation and the builder says, oh, it's just a little crack, let's go ahead and build a house, it's not a problem. Until the neighbor builds a pool or there's an earthquake and the foundation severs, and what happens to that 2 or 3 story house? It caves in. So in your lifetime, if you have a significant methylation deficiency, meaning you don't have enough gas in your gas tank, if you come across some event in your life where there's extreme inflammation, it can pull you into the vortex. You can have lots of problems. So we need to talk about methylation. All right, so what is it? It's a transfer of that little carbon and 3 hydrogens from one chemical group to another. And it's when you take a substance that's previously soluble, meaning it dissolves in the watery part of the blood or in the watery part of the cell, you slap a methyl group on it by an enzymatic reaction, and it's made fat soluble. Our brain is about 60% fat. Our nerves are covered with myelin, which is a fatty sheath, and all of our cells are supposed to be surrounded by fat. When you methylate a substance, such as a B vitamin or neurotransmitter that's dissolved in the watery part of the blood, then it's made to be able to diffuse through the fat that covers the cells, the fat that covers our nerves, and the fat that our brain is made out of. This is critical. Next, how do you know if you have a methylation issue? Well, this category right here under extreme exhaustion has to do with our mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of our cells, and they help us produce ATP, which is energy. Some people just have extreme exhaustion and exercise doesn't help. It takes them 2 to 5 days to recover. They don't get that endorphin high or metenkephalin high that you do when you exercise. They have slow healing, slow metabolism, low muscle tone. So when you have a baby that's like a noodle or has hypotonia, that is a mitochondrial issue. This category right here has to do with neurotransmitters. So if you have short-term memory, focus, concentrational, and organizational skill problems, mood, instability, sleep problems, you're clumsy, lack of train of thought, or mixing up words, that has to do with neurotransmitters. This category has to do with the immune system. So if you've struggled with yeast infections, yeasty overgrowth, recurrent bacterial or fungal infections, lots of gut issues such as irritable bowel syndrome, which is essentially a garbage pail diagnosis, we don't know what it is. If you have sinus issues, or if you've taken multiple rounds of antibiotics or steroids to cure infections, or had recurrent bladder infections, many times you have issues in your immune system. And methylation forms the foundation for our biological house that supports all of these processes. So it's really important. This slide summarizes that. When you have limited dopamine production, dopamine's a neurotransmitter that's not dopey if you're a kid watching this with your parents. It's critical to help you with short-term memory, focus, concentration, organizational skills, sleep, emotional stability, and hormone regulation. It can also affect if you have a deficiency of methylfolate, which is the form of vitamin B9, and you don't want folic acid. That is synthetic folic acid. It's basically junk that gums up the little receptors in our body. There are these little receptors that sit on the outside of cells that say, come to me, folate, so I can grab you, methylate you, pull you into the cell. If you've got an issue with that, then you may have problems with poor neural healing, mitochondrial weakness, which we addressed previously, inflammation control, poor toxin clearance, poor hormone function, and T-cell immune weakness. So when you've got a methylfolate deficiency, it leads you down this path where if you look at your family history, you may have a lot of autoimmunity. You may have cancers, you may have psoriasis, eczema, asthma, migraine headaches, ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, POTS, which is postural orthostatic hypotension syndrome. You may have a severe infection such as Lyme disease with co-infections. Your body just cannot get over infections, or you get recurrently infected and it doesn't You just don't get rid of the infection. It's usually because you have a methylation deficiency underlying all the issues in your health. So this slide is nice. You saw how the little green methyl group, the carbon and 3 hydrogens, was moved over from the area that says MTHFR. Everybody and their brother talks about MTHFR, but a person can be MTHFR negative or just have one copy of 1298. There's 2 of them. It stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency, or methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. Big, long, fancy name to say that it's the last in a series of several enzymatic steps that gets you from folate that you absorb from your diet or supplement and moves it down to 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. If you lack that, and that's what we'll find out from your genetics, then we give you 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and it's fat soluble, and it can go from the watery part of the blood into the fatty part of cells, including the brain and the central nervous system. So you'll hear that over and over again. So just watch this as many times as you need to in order to understand it. All right, so back to this slide where it has MTHFR. The reason why everyone makes such a big deal about it is that's the last step in a series that makes the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. So you saw how the little green methyl group, the carbon and 3 hydrogens, came over from 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, donated its methyl group to cobalamin, which is vitamin B12. But you don't want vitamin B12 that you get over the counter. That's cyanocobalamin. What you need is methylcobalamin. And you also need to be sure how it's delivered, either through the skin or under the tongue. You don't want to take a capsule and swallow it. The reason is that those little methyl groups get scavenged in the stomach and they don't get distributed to the rest of the body unless you're taking it in high quantities. So cobalamin, vitamin B12, is what we call a cofactor in this reaction. It's a catalyst. So you need the cobalamin to get the little methyl group, and then cobalamin donates its methyl group to homocysteine. If your homocysteine is too high, you may be at risk for strokes and heart attacks or cardiovascular events, blood clots, and it's converted to methionine, and then the methyl group is donated again down to homocysteine, and then it goes further down the chain. Homocysteine ends up in a pathway where cysteine is isolated, and then you end up eventually making glutathione, the body's master antioxidant. So you can see methylation is a dynamic process. You don't have to know all these details. Just know that that little methyl group is the foundation of your biological house. So we've discussed what your genetic test results will look like. We've discussed how to know if you have a methylation deficiency. We've also talked about the quality of supplements.